The new album was born from a long stretch of quiet, a period where stepping away from the industry felt necessary, not optional. After years of nonstop touring and performing, the imbalance between what the work demanded and what it returned became impossible to ignore. Instead of continuing down a draining path, he chose distance, space, and reflection. Those years away were not wasted. They became the soil where a different version of himself grew. When he finally returned to music, he carried new clarity, a sharper sense of purpose, and a willingness to rebuild on his own terms. Releasing the album after 6 years felt like stepping into a room where everyone assumed he'd never return. Without constant content, updates, or promotion, fans had lowered their expectations, maybe even assumed the door had closed forever. That unexpected reset worked in his favor. There wasn't a towering myth to compete with, only genuine curiosity. People leaned in instead of scrutinizing. They weren't waiting with arms folded, ready to judge. They were simply ready to listen again. The result was a debut larger than anything he'd experienced before, surprising even in with its reach and resonance. Touring had once been his life, but it no longer made sense. After years on the road, the financial math didn't add up. The emotional toll was heavier than the rewards. So he walked away completely, unsure if he'd ever return. When the new album dropped, he agreed to just 2 shows, but they became the biggest of his career. Forest Hill Stadium back-to-back nights, sold out in hours. This time, everything aligned. The deal, the business, the boundaries. He could perform, drive home to his family, and finally feel compensated in a way that honored his worth. Standing on stage again after so many years was surreal. He wasn't just performing songs. He was witnessing an older version of himself coming back to life. The crowd, 26,000 people across 2 nights, felt like a confirmation that the work he'd done in silence mattered. After the final note, he and a longtime bandmate embraced, overwhelmed by gratitude, disbelief, and the emotional weight of returning. It wasn't simply a comeback. It was evidence that the years away hadn't erased anything essential. If anything, they strengthened it. The distance had created depth, and the depth made the return unforgettable. Throughout the hiatus, he poured himself into writing for other artists, discovering fulfillment in serving someone else's vision. That period sharpened his instincts and expanded his musical vocabulary. It also taught him humility, how to detach from ego, how to support rather than lead. Those years were their own education, offering new tools and a different emotional rhythm. By the time he returned to making his own project, he wasn't the same artist who'd left. He approached the album with a steadier voice, clearer taste, and confidence rooted not in momentum, but in experience hard-earned through distance. When fans reconnected with him, it wasn't through social media spectacle. He still struggled with the self-obsession baked into online presence. Posting from his main account triggered pressure, comparison, and distraction from family life. So he built a fake Instagram page, just a blank, anonymous handle. It allowed him to communicate without the psychological weight of identity and expectation. Fans had to search for information, creating an underground sense of discovery. By distancing his ego from the rollout, he felt free to share without being consumed by the metrics. It became a playful, strategic, and surprisingly effective experiment. Relevance had never been about fame for him. It was a vehicle for utility. His deepest creative fear wasn't disappearing from the spotlight, but losing the ability to bring meaningful ideas into the world. If people stopped paying attention, the ideas might die before they could reach those who needed them. This album became a way to renew that connection, not for vanity, but for contribution. He sees himself as a vessel, something temporary. What matters isn't the spotlight. It's whether the work moves culture forward, inspires someone else, or becomes material for future artists to build upon. Faith played a deeper role this time. He felt the album wasn't something he forced into existence, but something he received. If inspiration showed up, he followed it. If it didn't, he accepted that too. He believes the best work appears when aligned with something bigger than himself. Call it instinct, spirit, or God. Instead of chasing hits or engineering outcomes, he focused on listening inward. The songs that came felt honest, unpretentious, and grounded. Ironically, those were the songs that resonated most strongly, reinforcing his belief that purity of intention can create impact beyond strategic calculation. One of the album's unexpected victories came through a track he assumed no one would ever discover. He made it purely for himself, a song he loved as a fan, something he'd want to blast in the car. He didn't think strategically about radio or market fit, yet an unlikely artist found it, loved it, and turned it into a #1 rhythmic record, a milestone he'd never reached before. It taught him again that creativity can't be fully predicted. When the offering is sincere, the universe has a way of placing it exactly where it needs to go. Taste became his compass of the album, an intangible mix of instinct, experience, and emotional honesty. Taste is hard to explain and impossible to fake, yet it shapes everything. He's learned that sometimes the cool idea isn't the most effective one, and the simplest approach can create the deepest connection. The album reflects that balance, moments of artistic boldness blended with moments shaped to reach more people. He no longer sees accessibility as compromise. He sees it as service. Taste doesn't mean obscurity or elitism. It means knowing when to push and when to refine. For years, he had wrestled with the tension between purity and popularity. In youth, he believed the most complex or unconventional art was inherently superior. Maturity taught him a different truth. Accessibility doesn't cheapen meaning. A song with mass appeal can still carry depth. A melody that reaches millions isn't less valuable than an experimental idea understood by few. The album embraces this new freedom. Some tracks are intimate and intricate. Others are big, bright, and designed for movement. Both expressions matter. Both serve a purpose. Instead of choosing between them, he let the album hold both simultaneously. Part of the album's creation involved accepting that utility and artistry can coexist. When working for other artists, he learned when to insert his own taste and when to step back. Sometimes the world wants box wine. Sometimes it wants a rare vintage. Both have value. For his own project, he allowed himself to explore every shade of that spectrum. He didn't feel the need to prove anything or force innovation. Instead, he followed where the songs wanted to go. The result is an album that feels lived in, less about flexing and more about sharing. Fatherhood shaped the album in unexpected ways. Becoming a parent 3 times overshifted his priorities, softened some edges, sharpened others. The quiet moments, late nights, early mornings, the humbling chaos of raising children, infused the music with clarity and emotional honesty. He no longer made songs imagining how they perform on charts. He made songs imagining how they'd feel years from now, when his kids were old enough to understand them. The stakes changed. The lens widened. The album became not just a creative statement, but a time capsule of who he became during those transformative years. His wife played an essential role in the album's existence. She grounded him when doubt became overwhelming. She believed in his talent, even when he considered giving it all up and working at McDonald's just to reset his life. When he wanted to spend millions of his own money to create the project independently, she didn't panic. She supported him. When he swore he'd never return to artistry, she accepted it. When he suddenly felt the urge to create again, she embraced that too. Her steady presence created the safety needed for him to take risks without fear. Returning to the stage with new music felt different from any earlier chapter. He wasn't chasing relevance or momentum. He wasn't worried about sustaining a tour. He wasn't trying to prove he still had it. Because he'd already let it go once, he had nothing left to lose. That made the performances freer, more intimate, and more open. He improvised. He trusted adrenaline. He trusted muscle memory. He allowed mistakes to happen without spiraling. The album's release became less about perfection and more about presence, being fully inside the moment, letting the songs breathe alongside the audience. The album also reflects a newfound respect for uncertainty. Earlier in his career, he needed detailed plans and tight execution. Experience taught him that some of the best moments emerge from disruption. Sound cutting out mid-show, unexpected opportunities, surprising collaborations. Uncertainty became less of a threat and more of an invitation. Instead of resisting it, he let it shape the project. The songs shift between clarity and ambiguity, between bold statements and vulnerable admissions. This looseness gives the album a human texture, reminding listeners that creativity isn't linear. It's a constantly evolving conversation. He approached this album with a slower, more deliberate rhythm. Instead of rushing to meet deadlines or maintain visibility, he allowed ideas to arrive naturally. He sat with lyrics longer. He lived with melodies before sharing them. The album carries that patience. It's spacious, confident, and unhurried. There are songs that feel like reflections after years of silence, and others that pulse with the energy of rediscovery. By resisting urgency, he created something that feels both contemporary and timeless. The project isn't trying to capture the moment. It's trying to outlast it. Ultimately, the new album is a story of return, not a comeback fueled by strategy, but a resurrection rooted in faith, instinct, and honesty. It represents the man he became after walking away, the father he became while gone, and the artist he rediscovered when he finally felt ready. It honors the years he thought were wasted, the doubts he faced, and the courage required to create without guarantees. The album is both closure and beginning, proof that stepping away doesn't end the story. It deepens it. And when the world finally heard the music, it resonated louder than ever before.